that free you up in good time here?
Yeah, we're fourth on the agenda, so I think I've got a little bit of time. Just for the Verizon report, just note that the direction was given to staff and property owner. Thanks everyone for accommodating me on that too tonight, I appreciate it. Didn't have the holiday in mind when this was scheduled.
So, Verizon report, during the closed session, council received information, provided direction to staff on a purchase and sale matter. Indirectly as it was. Okay, committee of the whole is resuming. Item number 6, finance and corporate services. Chair is Councillor Young. Anything to report, Councillor Young?
No, you have a couple reports in your package. 6.1 is the budget 2020, several items that Matthew's going to report on now.
Thank you very much. So this evening, we're going to just talk on a couple of subjects with regards to the 2020 operations budget. One is the water and wastewater budgets, numbers, administrative fees, and reviewing those. 2018 versus 2020 staffing comparison, and finally the government recycling analysis. So we're going to start with water and wastewater budgets. So we did review these previously, and now that we have a little bit more information and are able to make a recommendation around the rate increase, we are suggesting a 2% rate increase effective in 2020. Obviously, it will be at some point further on in 2020. I believe we instituted last year's around June 1st, and we would suggest making that again to be able to adjust that. But as you can see, when we're going through, there are some changes to each of the budgets, and in particular, the projection for the water treatment or wastewater treatment plant for the revenue and the expense is significantly higher than the budget. That is as a result of the revenue that we received for interest, and as you remember, we put $1 million into an equity fund last year, and it generated in excess of $200,000 in earnings last year. So an exceptional year. I think when you look at what the TSX did in the course of last year, that certainly is directly related to that interest income. We're not expecting that same result in 2020. However, in the first month and a half that we've seen so far, we have had strong returns on investment, but certainly there's some headwinds, and my understanding is that the Federal Reserve in the United States is looking at doing a rate decrease and among other things, which then does give you the indication that we're possibly heading into some headwinds when it comes to equities as well as bonds. So certainly we've been conservative. We're going to come back to a more reasonable 3% return on investment, and you're kind of seeing exactly how that filters down and through various budgets. So
Matthew, there are two options of dealing with that $200,000 in round numbers. Are we leaving it in the reserve account, or are we adding it to our operations budget?
So currently, from an accounting and administrative standpoint, we include it in the revenue, which then flows into the reserve account on a yearly basis when it's dedicated for specific reserves.
Yeah.
So
Because that's where the $1 million came from.
precisely.
That we invested, it came from the reserve account.
Exactly. So it doesn't go into general funds, it actually goes back into the wastewater treatment plant and then filters down into its own reserve.
I knew those answers.
Excellent.
I was just getting about there.
So as you can see from the right-hand side, it would show that we're putting $420,000 away for reserves. However, when you take a look at that a little bit closer, you can see wastewater treatment plant is about 111,000, the water treatment plant 142, but the amounts that we use to rejuvenate our water and wastewater streets when we redevelop those, it's only 76 and 88. So that's why we're suggesting continuing with a 2% increase in 2020, because we want to continue growing those amounts, and that's where we pull our works from year to year and every other year when we do major street reconstructions. Is there any questions about the water and wastewater budget? Okay, so going from there, we're going to cover administrative fees, and this is one of the things that I think came up in the course of the budget presentations, and I wanted to attack administrative fees first, and then on our March 2nd meeting, we will take a look at kind of our other transportation-related fees, such as road closures, things like that, as well as our building bylaw fees, so for licenses and those types of things. But here, when you take a look at administrative fees, and it's fairly small, but you can see down the left-hand side, we have the separated municipalities of Prescott, Gananoque, Smith Falls, Brockville, and Cornwall as comparators. And then we took everyone else in the Leeds-Grenville area to be able to compare ourselves against. So when it comes to Commissioner Loos, and there's several of us in the town office that are able to sign as a Commissioner Loos, and we charge $20, you can see it ranges anywhere from no charge to $30 at the maximum. And so at this point, we would suggest no change in that particular fee. When you take a look at burial and desk permits, then Town of Gananoque is $20, Brockville's $24, Cornwall didn't have an amount listed, and then you can see there's a high of $50 at Forwardsburg Cardinal. So we're suggesting, again, no change. We seem to be right in the middle on that one. Marriage licenses, $100. So low is 75, high of 150. Again, we're right in the middle, pretty much, and so we would suggest no change. Marriage ceremonies, $250. You can see that they range anywhere from $100 to $300. And then, again, we would suggest no particular change in that one. Non-sufficient fund charges. This is a charge that we have for any payments that might come in that don't have sufficient funds in their account, and therefore we have an administrative process to go through. And again, you can see that that ranges anywhere from no charge to a couple of municipalities through, I believe it was $50, and ours is 40. Again, we're not suggesting any particular change on that one. And finally, the tax certificates, which a lot of times when a property changes hands, the lawyer's office will send in a tax certificate to identify any outstanding amounts that there might be on that property, so that they can do the adjustments for tax purposes when they go to change hands. And it ranges from $25 to $53.50, and we're at $40, and we suggest that that would be not changed. So as I did mention, we will be going through the building or the licensing and fees that we charge, as well as some of those other miscellaneous ones. And then later on this evening, we'll also be talking about building and planning fees as part of this. So this is kind of the first time we've done this since I've been here, I think. And I think it's a good exercise to go through, and provides an opportunity to compare ourselves against some others and see if we're in the ballpark or too high or too low.
If I may.
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you. Matthew, do you know when the last time we did increase them?
Not in the last 4 years, I know that much. I think it's been quite a while since we've taken a look at that, so this is an opportunity to say, are we where we should be? And my general inclination is we don't want to be on the low end, we don't want to be at the high end, we want to be somewhere in the middle, and for the most part, that seems to be where we are.
Thank you.
So going on to the staffing comment comparison, So taking a look at the 2018 budget and when we were going through that, obviously we've had a change in circumstances with the closure of the Leopoldton ice plant, and so want to be able to provide exactly what we've done between 2018 and now. So from an administrative standpoint, in 2018 we had 6 full-time individuals. We now have 5 in the 2020 budget, and that's the combination of the CAO and treasurer's position. We have 1 seasonal employee, that's the summer student that we have from year to year. Fire department, just 1 full-time employee, no change. Building and bylaw, we had 3 contract positions, and that being the chief building official, the bylaw enforcement officer, as well as the animal control. And so in the course of 2018, we did bring on the CBO position full-time, and so that's why you're seeing the change, 1 adding full-time and 1 decreasing from contract position. In terms of operations, public works, and parks and rec, we had 14 in the 2018 budget. We have 12 full-time in the 2020 budget, and that's a reduction of 1 supervisor and 1 paper in the course of that time. Seasonal employees have gone from 12 in 2018 to 9 today, and that's because we had 3 individuals that worked at the community center on a regular basis throughout the winter season to support that operation. Crossing guards, we continue having 4 crossing guards, and contract position, we just wanted to highlight that we have brought 2 contracting items, 1 for cleaning and the other 1 for wood chipping in-house, and that's actually saved $60,000. And so reallocating those resources from external to internal and being able to support that. Water and wastewater, and that is our 2 individuals that are responsible for our distribution system as well as our collection system, and we continue having 2 full-time in that case. Recreation, tourism, dev, 3 full-time in 2018 and in 2020, and then from a part-time capital perspective, we did approve the 1 at the end of last year to help support the rec and leisure, and then seasonal, we remain the same from 2018 through 2020, and those seasonal positions are in relation to the marina, the pool, and the lighthouse tourism. So finally, library, and here we have 1 full-time position, and I believe there's 3 part-time positions. That hasn't changed between that time.
Councillor Young?
I just wanted to clarify 1 thing, Matthew, and that was the full-time person in the fire department is clerical.
That is correct.
All our firefighters and the officers are still volunteer.
That is correct. Yes. Any questions or concerns on this?
Just one thing, it's good to see this, just like the last one, just to kind of give us a little checkup and lets us know that, it's a good way to get that out to the public as well, that we're really trying to hold the line on staffing and administrative costs here, so we can actually, put the tax dollars into things people need, like the water tower, roads, hopefully the arena. So thanks for bringing us back.
Thank you. So next we move to garbage and recycling. That's everyone's favorite subject. So we had a great conversation with our contractor and were able to provide a little bit of understanding and knowledge around exactly what's changed in the marketplace when it comes to garbage and recycling. So prior to 2019, all recycled items from number 1 to 7, and when you flip over your recycled plastics, usually you can see it number 1 to 7, they were accepted by recycling depots across Ontario, and there was an international market for it. And the vast majority of recycling throughout the world, and not just in Ontario, was being sent to China. In 2018, China announced that they would no longer be accepting the vast majority of recycled material because they felt they had enough that they were producing from a domestic standpoint. So that had a significant impact on the worldwide and international market for recycled material. So in the spring of 2018, the recycling depot announced that they would no longer be receiving or accepting plastic bags, black plastics, paint cans, frozen juice containers, coffee canisters, cardboard and metal, plastic takeout trays, styrofoam, and any plastic container that held hazardous liquids. So, and actually at that point, they said that instead of up to that point, they would actually pay some municipalities, or you can drop it off for free, then they were actually going to start to charge $80 per metric ton. And that was from a sorting perspective. So the $80 per ton was actually absorbed by the town's contractor, because obviously it was a significant impact, but something that they were able to absorb, and we certainly appreciate that. And if, at the determination of the recycling depot, if it's too contaminated with those items that they don't accept, then they will actually charge $96 a ton, and it goes directly to landfill in that case. So, so that's the reasoning why that was implemented, and why they've been fairly stringent when it comes to that sorting at the curbside. The recycling depot also recently announced that there's been a downward trend on fibers, so that cardboard that is recycled. And so they'll now start charging $65 per metric ton to drop off, where previously it was free. So these are changes that continue to happen in the marketplace, but certainly, are we alone is kind of the next question. And we use Limerick as our collector, and they have actually implemented the exact same protocols in all the municipalities they work with. So Township of Ashlands, the Village of Miracle Walford, Township of Elizabethtown Kittley, and then the Village of Westport are following the exact same guidelines. Could we go back to recycling all items? And the answer there is no, because as soon as it becomes contaminated with those other items, they're going to say we're not going to accept it, and you're going to have to take it directly to landfill. In that case, if everything starts going to landfill, then there's two things that are going to happen. One is that we'll pay more to actually get rid of the 220 odd metric tons that would normally go to recycling, would have to go to landfill, and so there's a tipping fee. And then secondly, our recycling grant is, which provides 50% funding for the expenses that we do have, would likely be lost because we're not actually getting it from and diverting it from landfill. So that would be a bottom line impact of approximately $62,500. There was also a question that has come up, is could we just go to co-mingling like some other municipalities? Again, the recycling depot said we will not accept it in that case. Some of those other municipalities are paying upwards of $150 a ton to have it sorted, and a good portion of it going to landfill. So that's the impact that is potential. And could we just send the recycling to landfill? And as I mentioned previously, if we're collecting everything and it becomes contaminated, the load that we're providing, then it will end up going to landfill. And so a very similar outcome, $62,500. But then you also have to consider the environmental impact of that. That we're still trying to divert as much as we possibly can from landfills, and so making that decision to send it directly to landfill has an environmental aspect to it. So what is the future of recycling in Ontario? And the province announced probably about 2 or 3 years ago that there's a transition plan to go to 100% producer responsibility for recycling materials. And so that being said, that was announced a couple of years ago, and we're now hearing possibly in 2022 or 2024, sometime in that time frame. And until that happens, and we don't exactly know what form that's going to take, we're still responsible for doing recycling. The municipality is responsible for recycling. So I want to be able to provide a little bit of context around what that means, and then I was also able to provide a little bit of information around the budgets as well as the revenue. So as you're aware, in the town of Prescott, we sell bags, and as revenue generating, as well as being able to stipulate exactly how many bags are out there and whether it's Prescott garbage and that type of thing. So in 2018, there was approximately $143,000 in bag revenue, and then there's large item pickup, which produced another approximately 1,500 or 1,600 recycling grant revenue, and that's what I mentioned earlier about the 50% that we receive, and then blue box sales as well. We sell blue boxes downstairs. So total revenue of about $178,000. That being said, total expenses just for waste collection and disposal was $160,000. and waste diversion was just shy of 100,000. When we take a look at the 2019 actuals, we can see that the garbage bag sales did increase, and we saw that throughout the budgeting process that it was expected to increase, and that's now at just shy of 156,000. Large item pickup actually increased to $1,900 in revenue, and those are the stickers that people buy or the tags that they buy for those large items. Recycling grant revenue went up in relation to the amount that was spent on recycling in the previous year, and Blue Box was relatively the same. So revenue went to $195,000. For the 2020 budget, we're expecting $192,000 or somewhere in there in terms of revenue as we have it sitting today. That being said, waste collection and disposal this year is expected to be about $166,000 in 2019, and waste diversion about $87,000. One of the things that we did to reduce the cost of waste diversion between 2018 and 2019 was the reduction of, the implementation of doing in-house curbside chipping. We've saved approximately $20,000, and you can see that it reflected there. And then in 2020, we're going to be implementing doing large item pickups. So instead of having our collection agency do it, we'll actually have our town staff do those large item pickups. And for the vast majority of the cases, we know exactly where they are because they purchase the tickets and tags, and so that way we're able to be a little bit more efficient in that, and again saves the money. So when you take a look at solid waste went from 756 metric tons in 2018 to 792. Recycling went from 285 metric tons to 222. So you're seeing a decrease in the amount that's being recycled. That being said, there's still 222 metric tons, or approximately 30% of everything that is, 20% of everything that is put at the curbside is being diverted from landfill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Quickly through you, Mr. Chair, just want to thank the CAO for bringing this forward. The one, it certainly seems like the new status quo is really the only sensible option right now, simply because of what's happening in the province, what's happening internationally. The one question that I'm sure we've all gotten this from people in town is, can you not find a better contractor, someone that's more willing to accept these items and so on? And even when you say the international market and the changes, they point to Brockville. And is there any, and I think I know what the answer is going to be, is there any point in shopping this around, looking for another collector, something other than Limerick perhaps, that would actually improve the situation? Again, I think I know what the answer is, but we really should get it out to the public, because we hear that all the time. Just get somebody different.
So I don't blame Limerick for this, and I honestly don't think it would change. What it really comes down to is how much you're willing to pay to get rid of recycling. And now, so there's only so many depots in Ontario that are willing to take recycling, and the one that we deal with is continuing to come down to the things that we're able to move and get rid of in terms of the marketplace, and those that aren't. So I don't want to speak on behalf of other municipalities. I do know that there's been substantial increases across the province, everywhere upward of 35% and more when it comes to recycling. And some of those is not making a change at the curbside, but paying additional very large amounts to have it sorted on the back end. And so you're traveling, you're shipping it well out of your region, and in some cases those are starting to dry up as well, those opportunities.
And just as a quick follow-up, is there a way, I know we communicated some of this through social media and so on last year, but I think we still have to continue to make that point for people out there that are confused, a little upset, they don't understand what's happening internationally. Is there a way we could, if council's in agreement with this, put some of this into bullet points and put it out with RSL bills, however we communicate this stuff, and with the new schedule when it goes out at the start of each year? I think we'll pass that for this year now, but I think we've got to keep making that case that we're trying to be the most environmental stewards, but at the same time, global trends, global economy, there's only so much you can do with this stuff. I think we just gotta keep making the case, because we still hear it on a pretty regular basis from people in town.
Absolutely, so we'd be happy to craft something and work with you to make sure that we get the positive message out there, that we're still being able to divert 20% of the waste in town to a viable alternative.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Young?
Matthew, if my math is correct, our total metric tons of both has gone down last year.
That is correct.
And the difference between revenue and expenses has gone down. We're behind more in 2018 than we are in 2019.
Correct.
Any ideas why our total tonnage would go down?
Yeah, so it could just be a function of what people are doing. Certainly, we're seeing quite a bit dropped off at the compost site on a regular basis, so which is exactly what we want to try and get out of the garbage stream, and that's not included in the tonnage. Certainly, we're seeing in another way some stores are starting to reduce certainly the packaging that you're seeing. So I think you're seeing that from that perspective. In terms of the differentiation or the differential amount on the net income or net loss in this particular case, I think as you see more tonnage of garbage, you will see an increase in the ag revenue, which we've held steady. But certainly that starts to help offset and close back up a little bit.
Thank you.
Councillor Cassidy?
I want to thank you too for all the research and stuff, because I agree, education is the key. Despite the hassle our administration and our, what we have to listen to, I'm personally grateful that we didn't succumb to that pressure and just instead advocating for education, and hopefully the province will make it that manufacturers be it on their backs not to supply us with so much plastic, that kind of thing. So, education for sure is the key, right?
So in terms of the next steps for the budget, I was intending on bringing back 3 different items on March 2nd, that being the licensing fees review, the other fees review, and the events review. So that's what I have currently on tap for the remaining items to review on the budget. If there's anything else, then I'm happy to revisit those and consider it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Todd?
Quick comment if I could through you. So basically, the schedule would be to pass this, I'm assuming, at the March council meeting to finalize the budget?
Yeah,
Not before, because we're actually starting to, we're not late, but I mean, we're getting into March now, so.
no, absolutely. And so I'd be happy to, as soon as you're comfortable with the next steps. I think for me, it would just be understanding if there's any changes that you want to make to the projects budget. And then if there's anything that you have specific questions on the operational budget that we can go back. But we are making some slight review now that we have a couple more months worth of actuals. And so just going through that final review to be able to make sure that there's nothing that is coming.
Yeah, I just would, just to mention it to everyone at the table, it'd be nice to lock this down, so if anyone has any big suggestions, maybe we could add that for review in the March 2nd meeting, if
Sure.
council's approval of that, so we can try to get to the final stages here and give staff final feedback so we can approve it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. 6.2, staff report 06/2020, Ontario Job Site Challenge, letter of support. There is a recommendation for this item, that committee of the whole directs staff to draft a letter of support on behalf of council to be signed by Mayor Todd for the Township of Edward Cardinal application to the Ontario Job Site Challenge. Do we have a mover and seconder for this one? Councillor Young?
Be happy to move that.
Okay, seconded, Councillor Shankar. Mr. Armstrong, can you speak to this?
Certainly. So this is in relation to the presentation made by Mayor Seah at a previous council meeting. And so it's really just taking what the request was from coming out of that presentation and putting it onto paper. So I think, obviously attracting a large employer to Eastern Ontario is very highly beneficial, and it would certainly have beneficial effects on all the municipalities in the South Grenville area. So certainly we just want to provide a little bit of context around that, and then gain feedback as to how we'd like to move that forward.
I believe we're all present for the presentation. Okay. So the floor for comments, questions. Dr. Chancellor.
I think it would be in our best interest just to show our support to our neighbors in this application.
Councillor Burton.
Thank you. I think it's a step in the right direction to, get some collaboration and know that Prescott is going to be behind them in this application.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mayor Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick comments. Absolutely. I mean, anything we can do to bring jobs to the area and bring that development in is good. And anything we can do to work with Edwardsburg Cardinal, if we're writing a letter to support them, I like that. It's interesting how this is kind of working out. We're writing a letter for them, but it's all good. And the one thing I did want to mention, just because we are supporting the concept here, as I did say in the meeting when Mayor Seah did attend, we've got to be careful with this one as well, simply because there's a lot of residential, that we're looking at an area that is historically residential and agricultural. So while we're endorsing the application, I think it needs to be clear in the letter that we're not just endorsing any wholesale development of the site. I think at the end of the day, we don't want to lock ourselves into a potential ED19 issue back there, which very well something could arise with the residents, because not everybody is going to be in favor of an industrial site development right in their backyards. So we have to be cautious about that. At the end of the day, we have to work together, all three of us here in Edwardsburg Cardinal and Prescott and in Augusta. So this is a good step, but I just think we have to be cautious that we're endorsing the concept, not any actual plan, because we have to see what is going to result from this. So I just want to be clear for both media and for our own residents and for the residents of Edwardsburg Cardinal that it's qualified. Yes, we're behind working together, we're behind bringing jobs to the area, but we need to see more. And the other part of this is as well, as we did bring up at the last meeting, Councilor McConnell raised it, but he just got to do it before I could. I think we're on the same page on that. We've got to come up with proper revenue sharing for these sorts of things as well, especially if it does connect to our water and sewer. If we are bringing major employers, major taxpayers in here as well, we have to be able to ensure that our residents don't just subsidize that our residents see some of the benefits, the direct benefits, not just the side benefits, the direct benefits of these sorts of developments. But at any rate, I don't want to be negative about this. It's a fantastic development. Hopefully the province is serious about looking at us, because we certainly need a shot in the arm in this area. Along with, I will add a very brief plug here as well, the announcement last week with BIC coming to the region. That's the St. Lawrence Corridor Initiative. Wound up somehow in Brockville as sort of a Brockville announcement. There was a miscommunication on that, but that is something that will be largely targeted at the chemical sites, and Invista is the primary location. The corridor has been working on this one for quite a while. Significant investment and possible impact of a lot of jobs. That also ties into these efforts as well. So we've got some good things happening in the area. So I did want to mention that along with this. I think 2020 is shaping up to be a pretty bright year for all of us. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dr. Young?
Michael, I think we also made it clear to Mayor Seah that we are not spending Prescott taxpayers' money and millions. He doesn't have a blank check from us. He has overwhelming support, but we're not giving him money. This will be at the expense of the province and Edwardsburg.
The thumbs up is
Well, I think we emphasized that working together on the aspects that relied or referred to is, you know, our main concern, and that we're included, as the mayor said, about residential areas not being affected, and other things that the advanced planning has to get all in order. It's a lot of planning to even put the first shovel in the ground. Anyone else? Okay, it was moved by Councillor Jasmine, second by Councillor Burton. We direct staff to draft the letter of support on behalf of council we signed by Mayor Todd for the Township of Cardinal application to enter a job site challenge. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Number 7, operations. Nothing formal under operations. Councillor Shankar, anything you'd like to speak to?
No, everything's going well. I know we've had some snow removal, and that's been ongoing through the town, and I think we're done for now.
Actually, we'll be doing additional snow removal likely in the north end on
Thursday, Friday.
yeah, so overnight Wednesday, overnight Thursday.
Good, thank you. And I continue to hear good remarks from people, particularly from people out of town visiting about our snowbanks are the furthest away from humanity that they see anywhere. Councillor Young?
I think I saw a new truck driving around the streets this week too, did I not?
You did. It was just back for a small repair today in terms of just a glitch in the conveyor belt in the back. But certainly we did receive it late last week and putting it through its paces. And then one evening we were doing snow removal. We actually used this one of the dump trucks, and again, it's working quite well so far.
The plow is still yet to be added, or is it?
I believe it arrived on Friday afternoon as well, and so just before it's put all together, then I just wanted to get the one thing fixed to make sure it's working correctly.
Good. Money well spent.
Thank you,
Lots
yes.
of money.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Councillor Shankar. Moving on to item 8, Economic Development Building Bylaw, Planning and Heritage. We have 8.1, staff report, bylaw enforcement officer appointment. I'll read it out. There is a recommendation for this item. The committee of the whole directs staff to bring forward a bylaw to appoint Paul D. Decker, facilities supervisor, as a bylaw enforcement officer to the council meeting of February 26, 2020. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Councillor Burton and Councillor Jasmine. Thank you. Councillor Jasmine, your portfolio chair, would you like to speak to this item?
Matthew Armstrong made up the staff report. That's quite thorough, so I'll let him speak to it, if I may.
Thank you. Matt?
So this is just to, I think we've talked about it several times over the years, and so certainly something that we want to put in place, make it a little bit easier for doing bylaw enforcement during those midnight hours, so that we're not keeping so many people awake, and being able to just function normally throughout the week as well from a bylaw perspective. So this is something that has been long suggested, and certainly bring it forward.
Good. I have a question or two for a man to my far right here when we get going. So anyway, I'll save that. Do I have a mover and seconder? All in favor? Opposed? If any? Thank you. Okay, 8.2, staff report 08/2020, building and planning and fee review. We have a recommendation for this item that committee of the whole directs staff to develop a revised fee structure to be brought back for further consideration. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this one? Councillor Jasmine, seconder. Councillor Shankar. Councillor Jasmine, portfolio chair, would you like to speak to this item?
I believe it's what Matthew spoke of just recently, in that Sean Erlin has produced this staff report for our consideration to be brought back in comparing us to our like municipalities.
Okay. Mr. Merriman?
No problem. So yeah, during the 2020 budget process, it was requested by council that building and planning fees be reviewed to see if Prescott fees were obtaining cost recovery, and more important, were they in line with the other local municipalities. It is important to note that planning and building fees have never in Prescott, to the best of my knowledge, covered costs. In general, they tend to fall somewhere between 30 and 50% of the normal cost to run the departments. Although in theory you could charge as much as you want, it is also important to stay within what the region can handle. And it is important not to necessarily scare away growth by being obviously head and shoulders above, other local municipalities. I did do both. I gotta caution though, many places like Prescott have very simple building permit fees. We have $850 per construction value, whether it's residential, industrial, commercial, institutional, it doesn't really matter. And even our minimums are fairly similar. I'm not saying there's no differences, but like we fit our building permit fees onto one sheet. Some of the places like Perth, to give you an idea, they have almost 25 different fees just for new building. Okay, they have 5 different things for assembly occupancies, which are anything from schools to churches to restaurants. They got 5 different residential construction rates. Again, each place finds their own way to do it, but when I did do it, I took what was most comparable in relation to Prescott. So Prescott tends to do a lot of renovations with some, relatively small, new single-family homes and stuff like that, small apartments, small additions to existing manufacturing already for the most part. So I do ask that when you remember, you might say, well, is it exactly that? It is in relation to the scenarios I created, but you could easily create another scenario where it would be slightly different. So I just ask you to remember that. So what I did, in fact, they're here if anyone wishes to see them, is I pulled all the building fees from all across the area and every place that we looked at, and including the fact that it is important to note that Prescott has not adjusted their fees since 2013, which is getting to be 6 or 7 years ago now. So there's really 2 methods that municipalities charge for building permits. They either do it on the cost per thousand, or they then tend to do it on a rate per square foot. And then there's the odd one like Perth. Perth actually does both. If it's brand new, it's a rate per square foot, but if it's a renovation, it's price per thousand. So as I like to say, it's kind of funny how you can make it complicated if you want. But the one reason why I suggested Prescott would want to stay at rate per thousand is 2 reasons. As inflation pushed up the costs of doing the construction, you're slowly got like a form of fee adjustment in it. And the second thing is we do an awful lot of work that's renovations, not necessarily new builds. When you think about all the repurposings of buildings and stuff like that, it's really tough to come up with a price per square foot simply because so much of it is kind of piecemeal. You start in this corner and you come and you see all the framing for this corner, then you come and see all the plumbing for this corner, then you come and see all the insulation, then you move to the next corner and go through the same thing. Whereas in new construction, you just go once for framing in general. You just go once for the plumbing roughing. But like I said, with the renovations that we have, I would suggest to you that rate per thousand of construction value is wise. As you can see there, Prescott is at the very low end. We're at the 850. I can tell you North Grenville and a couple others are actually reviewing theirs at the same time we're reviewing ours, so theirs may go higher. But at the same point, one that was unique was I'm pretty sure it was North Grenville. If you got to a big enough project, it would slowly come down. So if you got to a $5 or $10 million project, kind of like we do with development charges, you know how an industrial, the first 2,500 so much, and then the next one so much. Same concept, but based on dollar value. So, and as you can see there, Perth kind of leads the pack when it comes to renovations anyways. They're $20.81 per thousand for renovations in their heritage area and stuff like that. And then the prices per square foot, you'll notice that Brockville's fairly low at 75 cents, but they have an awful lot of add-ons, and more important, regardless of what type of house you build, there's a minimum fee of $23.25 regardless. So, in the end, it wouldn't matter if you built a 1,000 square foot house, it wouldn't be $750, it'd be $23.25. So, oh, and the one thing I would like to add for both Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal, because we tend to build houses that have a basement, even if they're unfinished, I took the price per square foot was the price of the living space up above and the price of the unfinished basement, because they charge like a fee for each to come up with the total for the house. Because like I said, in most cases, you're building a house that has a basement. So what I did is I took a few scenarios, like I said, so the following is a residential permit fee based on a single detached home that has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an unfinished basement, a living area of 1,200 square feet, a single car attached garage of 600 square feet, a rear deck and a front porch of 280 square feet, and a total construction value of $250,000. This is a very common building that we get in just about any new subdivision that's coming through. They might be slightly higher in value, but basically, like I said, if someone gave me a price for this, I'd accept it at $250,000. As you can see, our fees, again, are at $21.25. Again, Knockways $3,000, North Grenville's $3,000, Smith Falls is $29.50. Those are all the ones that did the price per thousand of construction. Okay, Perth would work out to $34.71.60, and that had to do with the fact that they have minimums for even their decks and stuff that are added to new single-family homes. I did ask Brian Gass, who's the CDO over there, I sent him this and I said, could you confirm the numbers? And he came back with the numbers that I used. Because like I said, their system was interesting. It had a lot of ins and outs to it. Brockville was $28.45. Again, that was because of the minimum of the minimum fee plus then the add-on for the garage and for the decks. Augusta $27.20 and Edwardsburg Cardinal $3,000. So as you can see, there is some room for Prescott in the area to reconsider increasing their fees. Okay, so again, then that was residential. This is commercial industrial. As you can see, each place is fairly similar, although Augusta had an interesting one. They actually have a maximum under their farm buildings. It says no farm building, no matter how big it is, will be maxed out at $750 if they have a farm license, like a farm number from the federal government. So that was, again, some interesting things, how each place deals with the situation slightly different. Also, Edwardsburg Cardinal had a combined thing, as you can see, $9 at the top per $1,000, or 40 cents a square foot, and that one's set to whichever one's higher. So you do the math both ways, and whichever way the math worked out, higher is the one that you're going to charge. So as you can see, we had an industrial building, a 50,000 square foot F2 industrial building, which would be something like that you would use for manufacturing of kind of like northern cables or like Prescott finishing or stuff like that. So not the lowest end, which would be just storage warehouse, but not also the highest end, a value of $2 million to build it. As you can see again, we came in at the low end of the scale, although we were fairly comparable to Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal. And Edwardsburg Cardinal, I think it worked out to, at $9 a thousand on $2 million, it was $18,000, so the price per square foot kicked in this case. So, and then the last thing I went to was the minimum fees. minimum fees, it's really important to remember, you want to keep them low for a reason. You want to keep them low so that you have high compliance rates, so people don't feel it's too big a deal. Like, who wants to build a 500 square foot platform that has a, you know, a $300 building permit to it? So as you can see there, in that case, we're a little bit, I'd say in the middle at 125, but as you can see, there's some places. Brockville has a minimum of 185, Smith Falls 142, and Knockaway is slightly below us at 100. North Grenville is at $30, and I have been assured by their CBO when they're reviewing this that they do not wish to leave it at $30. But you know, that's what it is now, and who knows? Just because the CBO doesn't wish it to go up, council may disagree with them. So again, I took a pretty simple thing, a 400 square foot deck. It's 20 by 20 at the rear of a house that comes in fairly often over the summer for people to build. And as you can see there, we basically just hit the minimum fee. Basically, we have to hit almost 15,000 in construction costs before someone goes past our minimum fee. And again, it still does not go up very quickly. But as you can see there, we're right in the middle, and so the minimum fee is not necessarily something that I would recommend changing, but of course I will follow whatever direction council gives me. So then when we switched over to planning fees, one thing I would ask you to pay attention to is wherever you see the word plus. Plus should scare you, it should scare developers when they're doing it too. And unfortunately, there's no way to easily quantify how much that plus will be. In some cases, it has to do with the fact that it's actually just a deposit more than a fee. Meaning that if someone decides to appeal it, or whatever the case may be, the costs go up and then the costs are passed on to the other people. Or there's actual administrative costs that are tough to quantify, because it'll say peer review is a plus. So if they send it out to someone like EVB to take a look at, or Macintosh Perry, or whatever the case may be, if there's a fee for that, that gets added to your fee as well. So, but as you can see there, in all those cases, we're fairly not too bad. Other than, like I said, the pluses can certainly push up the price fairly quick. I knew one person once to build their house that was pretty near $20,000 by the time the OMB and everything was done. And the extra fees that came through for it, it was on a lake. I'm not saying that it wasn't a special case. But the plus side for those municipalities that decide to do the plus is that if there's a complicated issue, there is a way to recoup the costs that you're incurring. Because if that same thing happened here in Prescott, and I think, have we actually gone to an OMB or just got to, not recently. When it goes to an OMB, it really quickly goes up in costs. And I mean, and unfortunately, when your fees don't cover it, it means that the taxpayer is covering it. So like I said, that's one of those things that we may wish to consider. Some of the things that I also found interesting, North Grenville had both a minor and a major zoning amendment. And the rule of thumb was kind of like this: if it was site-specific zoning, so you know how we'll do R1 special exception 8 or whatnot, and it's just one small thing that's in relation, like it's not changing the whole type and everything like that. They tend to charge a little bit less because in the end it tends to be more of a housekeeping issue and, you know, compliance with the neighborhood. Does anyone have a concern with this? It's not necessarily changing the fact that it's no longer a residence, it's just a residence that maybe has a home-based business that's, you know, not listed as an acceptable home-based business. And as you can see, places like Brockville is actually on the high end in this case. Compliance letters, we do issue compliance letters here in Prescott. I will state this, we charge by the department for the most part. So if someone asks for planning compliance, we give them a planning compliance. If they ask for building department compliance, we give them one of those. If they ask for fire department compliance, we give them one of those. But each one is kind of $50 per department. So if someone had a piece of property that they were super worried about, it may cost them $150 or so to actually get it completed by the time they check all the various departments. And that, that compliance letter actually involves searching the files, determining what's there, what's been done, is properly closed off and everything else. It certainly does take at least an hour of staff's time every time a compliance letter is requested. Does anyone have any questions?
Anyone around the table? Councilor Jennifer?
Just thank you for such a thorough report, and it certainly looks like there's really both residential and industrial for the building fees, as well as the planning fees to possibly review and recommend increases. So that's great, thank you.
Councilor Bird?
Thank you. I too want to thank Sean for his thorough report. I would like to see if we are going to look at increasing the fees, to not have that plus sign in there, just have, if it's $50, then it's $50. It's not $50 plus all the hidden fees. I would not recommend it. I mean, people want to see a price and pay that price. They don't want to have to come back and go, oh, I still owe you more money. You know what I mean? So
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
I would like to see just one price.
I can appreciate that. Like I said, it's about finding balance, so I don't think we want to go to purse extreme, where you've got that really on the far end. But it is also tough to come up with fees that work for every individual situation, especially when it comes to planning. I've seen me go to a planning meeting and be convinced that there's no way it's not going to be real smooth and nice, and I get hammered the other way. And I've also seen it go the other way, where I think, God, this is going to be a really complicated one, and we get there and everyone's really fine with it. So I do like to hear what you're saying, and I'll certainly take that into consideration if I'm instructed to bring something back. It's just I would warn you that I wouldn't mind minor and major. I kind of like that. It kind of says if it's something that we see as being more complicated, it'll be slightly more, but we'll still hold the price. At the same point, if it's something pretty simple, we'll still give you a price reduction on it to not assume that we're going to have all sorts of issues with it.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. Anyone else? Councilor Schenker?
Thank you. Sean, I really like that you did, the way you did this, where you compared all our neighbors. So that makes me more comfortable with any increases we do. And maybe we stick with the same kind of idea that we have with our admin fees, if we keep it in the middle of the pack, not too high, not too low, but then we're not pushing anyone away. But are you gonna come back with numbers for us to approve?
Well, okay, so the way this would work, because it's actually the building law, and it may even happen with any fees that you look to increase, but we actually have to have a public meeting. We have to advertise it ahead of time, we have to put it out, bring people in to see, or at least give them the opportunity to provide feedback, what they like, don't like, stuff like that. I can tell you when I've done it in the past, I tend to make sure that I at least reach out to all the major contractors that I'm dealing with in the area so that they're aware, not only of the proposed fees, but to give them a chance if they have any small projects or big projects they want to get in prior to the new fees, or at least that they don't feel like, geez, if I showed up, you know how you feel at the gas station, you see it at 99 cents in the morning, you come back in the afternoon, it's $1.06, and you go, I would have fueled them if I'd known. So like I say, I like to pass that on. I will say this, building's getting more complicated all the time. Even since 2012, the average new home had 8 to 10 building inspections. Now we're up to 16 to 20, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're changing a lot of things. Radiant heat's much more common, ICF is much more common. Just things are, as we give people more options, it creates also more oversight, unfortunately, to see it before it gets closed up. So as I like to say, when you consider the fact that the average house now has 16 to 20 inspections and it costs at least $100 to inspect it by the time, you pay my time in the vehicle and everything else, it doesn't take long for that whole building permit to be ate up. And like I said, even if I bring back something, I submit, I would not suggest the council to go into cost recovery, but it would be nice to maybe get up to 50% on a regular basis being covered instead of 30 to 50. Because as, and Matthew can confirm this for me, for every 25,000 to 50,000, that's 0.5% to 1% roughly on the taxes that don't have to go in.
Counselor Young?
Yeah, I think there's room to move on a few of these prices. When was the last increase?
2013.
So we're now 7 years. It's, I'd like to see us move a little bit and then a little bit more in another couple of years, and rather than one big jump down the
Spoil
road.
sport.
Okay, well, you've heard the motion, that committee of the whole direct staff to develop a revised fee structure to be brought back for further consideration. And I think, given the fact it's been 7 years, that I think.
Now, the only thing I would like to ask her to get direction from, if you don't mind, because this is the first time I've been through it. Often I'm instructed to take it to public meeting and then bring it back to council, or do you want it first to council and then to public meeting?
Good questions, comments?
I would think first the council.
Anyone else? Mr. Bird?
I think it would, is the first stage. I think it's a good idea to bring it back to council, so, you know, we can agree on it here and then get the public feedback after that, so we have something to start on.
It's just sometimes the public feels it's, oh, it's a done decision. You had your decision, you didn't even hear from us before you. So, like I said, it's just.
Well, I think also we've made the comment that we're asking for minimal
Yep,
type
I
increases,
got that,
that, so that we're not shock value or anything like that. Anybody else? I'm asking to vote on the fact that we bring it back directly to council with a public meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Well, we have Mr. Merriman warmed up here. We have another one. Staff report 08-2020, building and planning fee review. Oops, sorry. We've already been there. Staff report 09, construction activity in the town of Prescott, January through December 2019. What's gone on in the last year? Reports for information and the managing building bylaw. Sean Merriman can speak to this.
Yeah, this is the year-end review. As you can see, permits were up, but we did not have that one big project, as I like to say. Most years we had one big project that often represents, you know, a third of our building permit fees, and we did not have that this year. Although we did have, I will say, at least two, technically it was three the way the permits worked out, larger projects that came through in the month of December, and both of those were down on King Street. Well, all three were technically on King Street. As you know, the one store is, the one building near the corner is being refurbished and rented, which will result in another 10 rental units plus 2 commercial spaces at the front. And then one slightly further down, which will have 5, right now 4 apartments plus 1 commercial unit out front. That's a little farther down the block. Both are proceeding, but both of them ended up, between the two of them, there's almost $2 million worth of construction value being put into the downtown. In total this year, we did over 341 inspections. Inspections include everything from the failures plus the passes and the site visits that occur when we think someone may be doing, you know, just keeping an eye on it. Sometimes it's just to keep an eye on it, and other times it's because we think they went outside the scope of the work, or more important, they didn't have a permit for the scope of the work to begin with. So all those things are in there. In the planning department, we had 16 applications received prior to December 31st. As you can see, they ran the gamut from minor variances to consents to heritage notice to 3 site plans, 1 zoning amendment, and 1 sign bylaw variance. And some additional highlights from the department. I did attend the 2019 OBOA AMTS, which is held every fall. I was re-elected to the board of directors for the provincial body, and in the following meeting that occurred after that, I was elevated to the executive of the board, and I'm now the secretary treasurer for the Ontario Building Officials Association. And I would like to say thank you to all the council and staff that helps me manage my schedule so that I'm able to do both jobs, hopefully fairly well. I also completed one OBOA course, which is part 1011 on the Ontario Building Code, which is the change of use. So that means, so if you have a building down anywhere, and say it used to be a retail store and now it's being converted to a restaurant, that's a change of use. If it was used to be, a change of use. So we basically go in and take a look to make sure that it's compliance in terms of life safety and everything else is that no worse than it was before, and more important, the new use isn't any harder on the life safety systems. Some of the things that are toughest to usually renovate are things like changing from a regular retail store to a restaurant. People have sometimes trouble understanding how much more life safety goes into a restaurant due to the fryers and the grills and everything else. So it was a very good course for me. And part 11 is actually renovations. And the renovations, again, if something's built in the 1900s, you're not necessarily going to bring it to today's code, but you have to be able to bring it up as far as you can that's reasonable. And like I said, it's actually one of the toughest parts of the code, so it was a very interesting course to take. It actually has the highest failure rate in Ontario when the exams are issued. They own something like 26% of the people only pass it. Like it is one of the tougher ones because not only do you have regular code that you'd have when you've got prescriptive, you've got all these what's called compliance alternatives. So you have to take a look at past performance, you have to take a look at what's the maximum that you can get into it and all these other things, and it really makes it a complicated process to go through, and it was a very good course for me when you consider the amount of renovations that we have in Prescott. I also brought this. This is the changes to the building code that happened in 2020. It is actually only, not as bad as it looks, it's only 200 changes, but because those changes, kind of like everything else, you change this part of the code, but then it affects 3 different parts. So you end up getting the paper that goes with all of it to reflect the change in the 3 different parts.
You're not going to read all of those.
I'm not, unless you want me to. I prefer not to. But we did have, in total now, I have done 3 presentations to local building officials in the area regarding the changes. It's one of the things that I do through the OBOA is I help make sure that all the local building officials are up to the changes as we understand them. So that has also taken some time for me. I also thought it was interesting that, I don't know if you remember, but we passed that resolution for the AMO in relation to things. 86 got passed on to AMO in the end. I'm not sure how many ended up actually here in Prescott, but I was talking to the AMO president, and they said that they had received a total of 86 that involved, if not the exact same, something fairly similar. And it was an important document. I think it said, we're glad you're talking to us, we're thrilled you're talking to us, but let's make sure we understand so we're not stepping on each other's feet. Like I said, I think it was well received. So revenue was down this year, but almost double the amount of income I took from the permits in the last quarter. So compared to the rest of the year, it almost was even. We had almost $30,000 and 15,000 was collected. 15,000 of that was basically collected in the last quarter or very close. So that, oh, sorry.
So I just wanted to point out that our total fees for the year were just under $30,000.
Yes.
And if you put a 10% increase on all of those numbers that we were talking about 10 minutes ago, it would only be $3,000. And you're certainly not going to come back with a recommendation of a 10% increase on everything, I'm guessing.
See, part of it is the direction I get. Like I said, I personally didn't, I intended on coming back with somewhere between $10 and $12, which $1.50 on $8.50 is closer to 15%. 25%?
25%, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, but it all helps. The point is, every
sure.
dollar that we take in
Yeah, I agree.
increases, and I mean, the nice thing is hopefully going forward, we won't have as bad a year in terms of actual permit value as we did this past year. Hopefully we'll have that one big project every year.
Well, that
Which
one,
is-
the one the year before last, in 2018, was the big $2 million
Yes,
fee, right? So,
yeah, it was $17,000 to there. It makes a huge difference.
right.
Well, thank you, sir. I think on behalf of council, a huge thank you for particularly as they say, the devil's in the details. So we've certainly gone over that a time or two. One item I noticed is staff reviewing over 1,000 pages of the interior building code, and that's that hands-on stuff that you can't get around, I guess, right?
You know, I actually was hopeful, and in fairness, the current government is moving towards harmonization. A lot of these changes had to do with harmonization with the national code. But no matter how you slice it, it's just a big document. It is the only regulation in Ontario that is not in both French and English. It's only in English because it's just
There's
so...
a savings in time.
The savings in time is just massive, and even still, it's amazing the ripple effect. As I always tell people, when you're building something, sometimes it's so easy to go, well, I just want to change this one little thing. It's not only just changing that one little thing, it's how that little thing affects everything else. And it's complicated enough, but I enjoy the job, so.
Well, thank you, and I think we're all in favor of saying thank you for the work done, and I know I'm going to grab a copy of that on the way up.
Well, if you wish.
And you're not off the hook yet. We have your hat trick of activities here tonight. So item 8.4, staff report 10/2020, bylaw enforcement activity within the town from January 1st to December 31st, 2019. Your eyes, sir.
Okay, well, if you go to the two graphs that have to do with it that we handed out, as you can see, the years are very comparable. There's very little, not much really changes in a whole lot. In some ways, it'd be nice. The one big difference that you will notice is animal control was quite a bit down in terms of the total animals collected, although raccoons were certainly higher. And I'd like to think that's because we did change policies in terms of how we were dealing with it. We were making sure that the animals that they were being called for, that it's not just we called and said there was a dog running down the street. We actually knew where the dog was. You know, me and Dave did an awful lot of work to make sure. And we also made sure that I like to think maybe it has something to do with the tags too, because this year alone, eight animals were returned to their owners before we had to call the animal control officer in. So that meant a couple times that we had, you know, nice doggies in the building department downstairs, but I think it was a very fair trade in order to minimize the amount of times that we had to call someone from outside. We did have big, again, work also with the health unit to make sure that we were around during the rabies clinic. This is to stress again, it wasn't about enforcement, it was just about encouraging people to make sure that they got their dog tags. We didn't bring them in and then nail them with a $70 fine. We just reminded them that they could get their tags if they wanted. They should get them and why, and again, we talked about all of that. So like I said, all of that was a very good year. The financial implications, we performed as budgeted, if not better, for 2019. And like I say, we keep reinventing both departments and planning for that matter, all three departments, so that we can find cost efficiencies and savings. I mean, the whole thing with Paul, as you're aware, when we come in for overnight enforcement, we tend to come in, you know, usually 3 to 4 hours will get us through the whole town. There's no point paying us to stay, so we go home, but unfortunately someone comes at 5 a.m. and then parks on the street. The whole purpose of kind of having Paul there is so for that odd one, it's not to have him out there doing 50 cars a night, it's to have him, you know, help with...
That's the odd story.
Well, the odd strayer, the one that comes in a little slightly later, and like I say, the people, I don't know if the public really realizes what a burden it puts on our operations department to try to get around vehicles. The plows aren't small, the front end loaders aren't small, you know, like I said, it's stressful for them without adding additional obstacles all over the place.
Just the one comment, the parking tags issued, I see there's a similarity between one year to the next there.
Yeah.
Are the flashing lights up at the shopping area doing their job?
They're doing an excellent job, no.
Okay, good.
The north end is really not a problem anymore, knock on wood. We have checked it even when we're doing the snow removal and stuff like that. Other than one night when 401 was closed down, which I certainly understand, for the most part, people are staying out of that. The flashing lights have gone a long way, along with the other signage, because we got extra big signage also inside of the parking lot. That they were saying that it was too small and stuff, so it has made a huge difference. I'm hopeful that all the residents on Fishel and Mackenzie are satisfied with the progress.
I take it you're not getting as many calls about as you were?
Not really. I had 3 emails one night, but that was it in the last 3 months. I have told them to contact me. I don't care if it's 2 in the morning. I tease them. I say, if you gotta be up, I might as well be up too. And it does seem to help, because they feel like they're being heard. They do realize we can't solve every problem, but they do know that we take it seriously. And you want to know something? The store owners are happier too, because I mean, they actually had quite a bit of damage done. In one case, the lamp light, or whatever you want to call it, the street light that was in there was knocked over. Various curbs have been pushed and stuff like that. And, you know, like I said, they're happy as well. So it was very much a group effort. It was no one thing that solved it, but was a whole bunch of little things, including the fact that the Cardinal truck stop reopened. It certainly didn't hurt. So.
I don't think around town we're hearing any as much as we were previous winters. There's always something nagging.
Yep.
Any other comments from the table, Councilor Burton?
Thank you. Have we ever considered getting cat tags? You know, you have here on your list, you picked up 43 cats. I mean, there could be a positive side, like you said, about the dog tags. You know, the whole reason of getting a dog tag is, 1, it's a bylaw, and 2, if you do lose your dog, you can call the town, and we know who owns that dog and can return. I mean, everybody considers their pets as part of their family, and if you have a lost dog and it's returned, that's a good thing. So, I mean, 43 cats, that's a lot of cats, and I know some cats are outdoor cats, and it might be something that we can consider, is getting people to tag their cats that are outside, and to help them return home if they are lost.
Mr. Merriman?
Yeah, we'll certainly do as directed by council. I'm not sure if around the council table the only thing I would suggest maybe as an idea, do we want to even try a voluntary compliance? Of just saying, look, there's no fine for it, but if you want, anyone that, and I don't know that we necessarily would just say it's a pet tag, because we are getting, one thing that I've done since we got here, when we first got here, we had these great big tags. There were some poor dogs that pretty much broke their neck. So we've gone to a much smaller tag. You know, we could still leave it mandatory for dogs due to the fact that they tend to wander maybe a little bit more than some of the others, but still make it, you know, but again, I'd have to receive direction from council to consider.
Well, we'll see where that takes us. You know, good idea. Anyone else? Okay, well, thanks, Mr. Merriman, for your report tonight. Very detailed, lots of work involved. Okay, number 9, water and wastewater. Portfolio Chair, Councilman McConnell, is not here tonight. Nothing formal. Anything, Mr. Ontario Fire Association competition, which is coming to town here. There's a recommendation for this item that Committee of the Whole directs staff to support the Prescott Firefighters Association's request for the Eastern Ontario Firefighters Association competition to be held in the town of Prescott from Friday, June 19th to Sunday, June 20th, 2020, 21st, 2020. I'll move her in a seconder. Councillor Burton, Councillor Young. Okay, as the portfolio chair, I can speak to this. Staff has received a two-page letter from the Prescott Firefighters Association asking for support in their efforts to put on this EOFA Day, or weekend, I guess it is, in June. Some of the items are staff requirements and blocking off streets, various things. Any items that catch your attention, Mr. Armstrong?
No, I think it's really well detailed in both their letter and the report, and certainly its return to Prescott is an exciting thing, and we're very positive thing for towards the end of June as well.
Their planning is well ahead of the key right now. They've made certain arrangements. They have Healy and Orr appearing in the band on Friday night, and it's going full force, and I'm sure you'll. One thing I'd like to add to this is perhaps we consider taking out a half-page ad in their program at a fee. I think it's $50 or $60 or something. If we so choose, just town logo and show support for it by means of comments. Councilor Burton?
Thank you. My husband was on the fire department for years, and this is one big event. He was actually on the fire department when we hosted it years ago. This is just not fire department. It is fire department families and friends that come to attend. It's a weekend full of activities, games that different races that the firemen and women participate in. They are cheered on from their family and friends and relatives, and it's definitely a great event that will definitely be a buzz around town, because people come from all over to participate and to take part and to cheer on the fire departments.
The public's not only invited as spectators, but they're also invited to the dances open at night and various open house and that type of thing. So there's lots going on. It's just it's going to be busy down in that corner.
Mm-hmm. They are looking for volunteers, so we should definitely throw that out there. And there's all sorts of activities that any volunteer. So I'm sure that they can get a hold of our town staff, or even give the fire department.
Sure, and report anytime ahead of time into the office and put your name down for something.
Yeah.
Work well.
It's going to be a good experience.
Councilor Shankar.
I think this is a great event, and it's good for the town, it's good for everyone. I just have a question about their request number 5. Is that something that we can accommodate?
So in terms of Dill Street, so we're still working, reviewing the camera work that was done on both East and Dill. That being said, we wouldn't probably even start the project until after that date. So it certainly won't be an issue if we were to do Dill, and we're still deciding whether it's done Dill or East this year.
And they're not asking to have the current Dibble Street repaved if it's not being reconstruction.
Exactly, so it's only if we were reconstructing it, could they have it completed by June 19th, so it didn't interrupt the games. Mostly because they use the street as a racing area.
You recall that we were talking about switching priority from Dibble Street to East Street.
Correct.
So it may be a moot point.
So we're not resurfacing that whole street?
Not at this point. We wouldn't, if we were going to do Dill, we would stage it in a way that it wouldn't affect that end. whether it be the more eastern side, or sorry, western side of Tibble, or east for 20.
So they're asking to not start until after you're done.
Exactly.
Okay.
Check.
I thought they wanted it done
Yeah, so
before.
basically, police don't have.
It's just a little more murky as to when the request.
And there's a lot more than just resurfacing.
Oh, yeah,
If
yeah.
we do do this.
So can I revisit my addition to this, that we buy a half-page ad in their program?
Was there a full page option?
There is, there was a price attached to,
The half page is $60 and the full page is $120.
choices?
Low and wide. Low and wide, 120 full.
Okay, 120 for a full page?
Please
Second.
not here, let's go.
Moved by Counselor Young, second by Counselor Burton.
You know he's gonna complain.
Let's have fun.
Okay, I'll reread it with that added in here. The Committee of the Whole directs staff to support the Prescott Firefighters Association request for the Eastern Ontario Firefighters Association competition to be held in the town of Prescott, Friday, June 19th to Sunday, June 21st. Additionally, full-page ad in their program for $120. And I have mover and seconder for the original with the addition added. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Number 11, capital projects. Nothing formal under capital projects. Councilor Burton, anything to speak to?
Nothing, I'm pretty excited to see the new truck around town, so I might have to have a little visit later on tomorrow afternoon, so.
Gonna go for a ride in it, are you?
Well,
She's gonna drive.
yeah,
Oh, really?
why not?
How about Wednesday night, you help clear the snow?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, number 12, action item list. Anything on that list that is various housekeeping things that we have been working on? Mr. Armstrong, anything on there that?
Not on the list, but I did want to just mention that on Friday morning, there is the BRNE session with Augusta, and I believe various business leaders throughout South Carmel as well as Edward Carmel have been invited. So I believe the invitation has been sent to all council. Just wanted to make that.
Where's it going to be held?
I believe it's at the Merck Hall.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Yes, I did do that, yes. I believe it's 9 to noon or something?
Yeah,
9 to 1,
I think
maybe?
we started at 8:30 with being able to come in and register and whatnot, but I believe it goes to 11.
Yeah, okay, good. Anything else on the action plan? Yes, Dr. Burton.
Thank you. I just wanted to let council know that a longtime employee, Bart Marshall, has officially retired as a crossing guard. I do want to take the time to thank her for her dedication. She was out there during storms and rain, and she gave all the children little books and snacks and treats. So they have already expressed that they're missing Barb, but have welcomed Nancy Cowan to the crossing guard position. So we wish Barb well and happy retirement.
And I think it was hard for Barb to give it up. She just loved the kids and loved the outing in the day, and
Yes.
I think it all worked well in her favor. So
Is it? Yeah, yeah.
for anybody that's listening or whatever, happy retirement, Barb, and we'll see you out and about.
Yep.
Period for media questions.
Question on water rates, just, what would the average resident household pay in a water bill?
So there's two components to each water bill. One is a fixed fee, and both from the water perspective and the wastewater perspective. And then there's the usage fee.
And $100 is a month?
Okay, it's pre-8 o'clock tonight here.
Just one last thing, I just want to, on behalf of myself and perhaps my fellow councilors, we just send our condolences to the Munson family for their tragic loss last week.
Absolutely. Devastating. Anything from the staff table over here? I have to go down a half page because we did one in the middle of it. Adjournment, do I have a mover and a seconder, motion to adjourn? Counselor Young, Counselor Jasmine, all in favor? 7:58. Not a record, but we'll take it.